the panel, the stage. So Philip, Tim, Luke, and Heather are joining me today. So once again, I'll reset the room by a show of hands. Okay, yeah, sorry. By a show of hands, raise your hand again if you vibe coded something. If we look around, that's pretty much most of us. And I think me personally, as somebody who has a slightly technical background, there's no reason why I should have been able to build some of the stuff that I built. And so we're in a really fascinating time now where you go from ideation to at least prototype very, very quickly. I think the challenge is a lot of us who have vibe coded something realize that like you get all this energy and you gotta solve a problem and you can see the problem to life, but then when it's time to like go to market or finish the swing, there's some stuff that can get a little uncomfortable. And even your understanding of like, because you don't have the technical skills, what are the pitfalls that you don't know about? What are the things that you might run into? So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. I'm going to start with Heather and let her introduce myself, and then we'll introduce herself, and then we'll get into some questions.
Thank you, Mike. I could also introduce yourself. My name is Heather Cannizz, and I am the founder of Creative Agency. And one of the products that I have vibe coded is called Vibe to Live, and it speaks to a lot of things that you just mentioned, but I won't go into all of that right now. And I'll pass the mic on to Luke.
Good afternoon, everyone. Luke Maslow. I co-founded APG Technology about 8 years ago. And of course, we were not building an AI automation at the time, but we have obviously adopted that. And we've worked with a lot of startups, we've worked with a lot of proof of concepts, not even MVPs. So we understand what the founder experience is like, and I think today's conversation on this topic will leave you all with some good takeaways, things you can follow up on from the conversation to go advance your product and what it is you're attempting to do in the marketplace.
Yeah, I'm Tim Chaw, co-founder and CTO of Cannizz. About 25 years of traditional engineering, CS degree, Georgia Tech, going back, Y2K programming. So it's been a while, so the last couple of years of AI development has obviously changed everything. So my background coming from large scale, fintech, high volume, high scale, down to the startup world where I've been on and off for 20 years. It's fascinating watching this transition, so it's good to be here.
My name is Philip Markert, and I've been in technology for long enough that I tell people I used to have gray hair. But I am a little bit of an imposter up here. I've been in tech, I've been developing software since I was like a child, so forever. And I've been selling it and working in the industry, big, medium-sized companies, everything from building online banking for one of the top 7 banks that used to be based here out of Atlanta, but also online ad tech, large-scale platforms. But I'm a bit of an imposter because I've never built a startup. I'm in the middle of building one right now with my wife, and it is an adventure, but I don't know what the end of the story looks like yet. So I'm still just like climbing my way up there a little bit.
Well, let's actually start there. So, Phil, non-technical founders can now vibe their way to a working solution with zero coding skills. From your vantage point, what are some of the hidden pitfalls of that path? What are some of the things that don't show up until later?
Okay. Well, for me, for the last 40 whatever years, my superpower was being able to make a computer do whatever other people wanted it to do or needed it to do. And that was a bit of a superpower. Maybe not if you compared me with other engineers, but if you compare me with like the rest of the world, everybody else is like, how do you do that? And so over the years, I've written everything, I've made open source packages, I've contributed to other people's packages, I've built enterprise software that scales. And through that superpower, if you guys have ever seen the movie The Incredibles, the whole theme about it is these superheroes at the beginning that can do these amazing things, and then the villain shows up, and the villain is this guy that has an axe to grind because he's jealous about superheroes. So he starts building these robots, and then he invites the superheroes, but they don't know it yet. The robots fight them, if the superheroes win, he learns and he builds that back into the robots so the robots get more capable, so that each iteration he's getting better robots. And at the kind of peak of the movie, he's there and he's, at the climax he's talking, he said, well, my goal is I'm gonna make this technology and I'm gonna give it to everybody, because when everybody's super, then no one is. And that's a big threat for people that have been in technology and have devoted their life and their career to learning and building these skills. So any of the engineers that are out there, that might feel kind of threatening, and I was very much sort of in that boat, right? My superpower was being able to make the computer do whatever. And now when anybody can come along and vibe code something, it feels like a threat. And you feel like, well, how am I going to make these skills count for something? And I think the most important part to keep in mind there is that we're democratizing the ability to build software. And so what used to be really scarce, which is the ability to make a computer do something, that's no longer the scarce resource. The scarce resource now is, can we come up with the right ideas that need to be built? And then can we tame them and put them together? So when I think about the things that you might miss as a non-technical vibe coder, non-technical vibe coders nowadays, you guys can build something in a week that is better than some of the best software I could build 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago. So it's not that the AI is not good at building software, it's great at it. But we don't know the right questions that we need to ask for it. So you might tell it what you want it to do. I want a demo that does this, and when you click the button, it does the thing and everybody's happy. But the hidden parts that you may not see would be things around like scalability, reliability. What happens if 2 people click the button at the same time? Or can one person accidentally see somebody else's data? There's a lot of hidden things behind the scenes that do still require an engineering mindset. So the best advice that I would give is start with vibe code, build something out. For the people that are technical in the room and are engineers, your value is no longer going to be just that you could make the computer do something. It's that guidance and advice around how to make it do the right thing after it does the flashy demo.
Any other thoughts on that?
I have another thought as, and I think it's important to share things you learn the hard way, and luckily I haven't had my tokens exposed and had them taken advantage of, but when you're vibe coding something, depending on what platform you're using, they might have the back end built, taken care of for you. I know that, I think Lovable has that, Bolt has that, but I like to do things the hard way because when I started vibe coding, I said to myself, I have a little bit of a technical background. I did IT in the early 2000s, and so I wanted to do it the hard way so that I knew how everything fit together. And in doing that, I learned that environmental variables and tokens and exposure of those tokens, or exposure of PII, or just any sensitive information, you want to be really careful about that. So you can vibe code something very quickly, but you've got to make sure it's safe on the back end, especially if you're bringing people into it, because that's where it gets tricky. So I would just say, be careful, have fun, do it. Just know, you don't know what you don't know, and I've learned things that way. And I was talking with Michael earlier about design. We were talking about design, and it's kind of like the nomenclature is a big part of it, whether I'm vibe coding something and it's design and steering the model to understand what the rule of thirds is, and like spatial logic and design terms, or what environmental variables are, I can't say that word today, variables are, or tokens and APIs, not wanting to get that out there. It's learning some of those key things to keep yourself and your potential customers safe.
That's a good lead into the next question. Luke, how do you avoid having your vibe coded MVP require rescue engineering?
I have a question. How many of you have used ChatGPT and told it time and time again not to put an M dash in the right response, right? Okay. Does it listen? No. Would you be surprised if I told you that in the way in which AI writes code, it does the same repeated process and approach almost every single time? So there's a Y Combinator stat that I think it's 25% of Y Combinator startups in the last year showcased 40 to 50% of the top 10 security flaws in the code from the vibe-coded software that was built. That is what leads to rescue engineering. So back to what Philip was saying, it's really important to think about edge cases and the operations behind what you're building, because that's what's going to differentiate a vibe-coded app from something that can really be scaled in the marketplace. Rescue engineering is nothing more than myself, not a technical developer by trade, having to pick up the phone to Philip and say, I really did something dumb, can you rescue me? Can you find a way out of what this thing is that I built and how it's actually working? So that is the risk, and that is what I think is the piece of information I would advise you to do. How many of you run a security audit on a platform that you're building? Okay, I see a few hands in the room. How many people would ask me back, and to be honest, right, we're here, we're helping each other. What is a security audit? Where do I find it and how do I do it? Like, who would have that question? No one, everyone knows the answer? No, right? That's okay. That's what this ecosystem is about. We're here to support you, to provide tools, to provide direction, because running those types of security audits, looking at the way in which code is built when you're doing vibe coding agentically, is how you get ahead of the game, solve for the edge cases, and have something that really will be stable when you get into a production mode.
Yeah, I agree with all that 100%. And I had someone say to me once, or online, vibe coding is great until you have to do vibe debugging. It's true, right? Just because it works doesn't mean it works well. Whether it's security issues, whether it's architecture, still keeping that logical mindset so you know what you're looking at and you know the right questions to ask. There are increasing agentic workflows out there to help solve that problem as well, but you still have to know how to build those workflows. Things like multi-agents where they vote on the best code solution to a given problem. Or you add a contrarian agent that will criticize the other agent's contributions. So there are solutions that are still agentic, but you still need the expertise to build those as well.
AI is actually really good at solving all of those other problems, like the security, the concurrency, like all those things. So this is not like gatekeeping where it's like, oh, vibe coding can't solve those things. The only thing is we have to know and remember to ask it to do those things. So if I tell it, hey, I want an application that does X, Y, and Z, it's going to build you that. But you didn't say I want an application that does X, Y, and Z, and is secure and scalable and this and that. So some of the best things, like Tim was talking about, there's skills, there's libraries out there that'll give you some pre-made prompts where you can run it through and have it check its own work. And it's not the same AI that's necessarily doing the work, it'll be like a second agent or something that's looking at what the first one did. That's the best thing.
I'm going to jump on that too. I was going to recommend skills, but I'll say when I first created my OpenClaw agent in March of this year, the first thing I did was I set it up on a virtual machine. I set it up on a Mac in a virtual Ubuntu environment on my Mac, containerized, right? So locked down. And the very first thing I created was a cybersecurity skill that then I turned into an agent that now I have available. And I changed the name of it, so I'll share it with you all after, at some point today, because it's a way that you can scan a website, a repo, a GitHub repo. I made it for myself, but I have a free link where you can check it out. But I did that because as soon as I started making skills and learning how to make skills, there are skills that have prompt injections. So you've got to be real. Like, I read the skills. I read them to make sure, and it's a lot. There's a lot of information there. They're just markdown files, so you can read them to make sure there were no prompt injections in the skills I was using. And then I created my cybersecurity agent to update itself, kind of like antivirus software goes out and updates itself. So just if you get into skills, they're super cool, but I recommend either buying an agent, trying an agent, or getting something to protect you to scan your skills so you're not just importing prompt injections, and go to reputable skills resources.
So I think part of the theme is that you have to be curious, you have to care. You have to know that if you're vibe coding something and you're not a technical person, you're not a developer, there will be blind spots, there will be gaps, and you have to have the curiosity and make it an important thing to go out and figure those things out. So Heather, on the same note, or on a slightly different note, say you did all those things, and you vibe coded your thing, and you made sure all your security was good. In a world where the ability to create something is flattened, in your mind, is distribution the biggest thing? If all of us can see a problem, build a problem, and we're careful to make sure that our solution is secure, then does the world move to distribution? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
It's funny because I might have answered this question differently, earlier this morning, but post-breakout session, I think that and maybe I wouldn't have, I would have just articulated it in a different way, I think a lot of us are probably tired of what's called AI slop. Everything looks the same, it feels the same. You start to read a LinkedIn, post, and you're like, hey, I wrote that. You look at a flyer, you're like, AI did that. A website, AI created that. And it just it feels like a sea of, it feels like a sea of sameness. And so where I think it's not just about distribution, it's about, are you actually solving a problem that needs to be solved, right? Is the market interested, right? Or did you just, because I've coded out of a lot of things, right? Thank you. I filtered myself there. I've vibe coded a lot of things, and the market's not looking for all of them. If some of it's for me just to create, and some of it's fun, and some of it's whatever. I think the differentiator and what is going to actually get you traction going to market, and what is going to be a differentiator is, does the market need it? Is it quality? How do you know if something's quality? Because now we can all create so many things, which is amazing. And I love that it democratizes it, to your point, Philip. But we've got to make sure that the market actually wants it. And then how do we position it to them in a way, from a messaging and visual and all-around standpoint, that sets it apart, that differentiates it. And that all comes back to like that fundamental knowledge and experience of go-to-market and go-to-market strategy. I see Sarah sitting right in front of me, and that's her expertise. So when I have go-to-market questions, I go to Sarah, because Sarah's the expert. I'm a generalist, and I have a lot of experience in a lot of things, but our experts in the room who have that deep foundational knowledge and that deep experience, we have to remember that how valuable and important that is. And so I think that is, hopefully that answers your question. Cool.
Any other thoughts?
I'll add to what Heather said, because I think it's very easy in this world now we are living to produce a product and think, well, I can vibe code 3 more features into that. That's what's going to get the market's attention. Well, guess what? The old adage still stays true. Software that gets adopted solves a problem, as Heather was saying, in the marketplace, but also go build that one burning feature that people need, not that you think they want, and do it really, really well to get traction, and then decide when to add the next feature and the next feature. Otherwise, you'll vibe code all these great opportunities and you'll lose track of who is your ICP, what do they really need, and that is something I would warn you to be aware of. And then I'll end with, voice of customer is still the way to go. Some of the most successful startups I have worked with and have been part of go to the street and will just ask people questions. I'm doing this, what do you think? That is still a great way to figure out product market fit.
That's a good tee to my next question. Tim, I'll toss this one your way. Traditionally in startup world, you had to have a large TAM, right? Total addressable market. Because the cost of building to your MVP was such that you had to have a large enough way for VCs to 10x your idea, right? With the ability to go from idea to a thing that's live in the world, the development cost shrinking so much. What is your thoughts on niches and people being able to say, well, now I can build this thing for this smaller community because the cost of building has dramatically dropped? Do you think that's a thing that people should consider? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question because it's an engineering and business question together. And I mean, anyone who's been building a startup over the last several years, you know, it's the TAM, SAM, SOM, the POC and MVP, you get the ROI. Like, yeah, we've all done that math, right? But that math is changing. So anyone who's been part of a product or engineering organization or a small org where everybody participated, you have to take your idea, you're working with a product person, a product team, or you are that person, breaking it down into components, you're writing it out, you're estimating how many people, how long is it going to take, I need to raise this much money. All that math has been blown away. So now you can build an app quickly for a small market when the TAM may be significantly smaller, and that's okay. It breaks down these barriers. It means markets that may not have had any applications or software available to them could now. But that does not solve the problem that Heather was talking about. That doesn't get you the customer. It doesn't get you the market. It doesn't get you the audience. That's still very much a people problem. Okay, there are agents to help with that too. But you still have to solve that from the business side. So, you know, while we sit up here talking largely about engineering and vibe coding, you can never underestimate the business necessity to build a market. And a niche market, that's just that much harder. It's harder to build a viral application and marketing for a small segment. That's never going to change.
All right, well, we're running short on time, so I'll ask one final question. I'll put my panelists on the spot because I just thought of this. Since we are here to start up solve and have a very tactical conversation, can you give one tactical thing that people can take away where they know how to address a thing, whether it's a website or you talk about design, how to understand the rule of thirds, what resources have you guys come across that if you are non-technical and you are vibe coding something, this will be a good way to orient yourself and educate yourself on knowing what questions to ask and how to think through the thing that you're solving. Since you're closest to me, Heather, I'll start with you.
So I listen to podcasts a lot, and I have a bunch of podcasts, AI Daily Brief, Moonshots, Twimmel, I don't know, I have so many that I listen to, and some of them are pretty technical and some of them are not technical, they're just information. AI Daily Brief is a good high level. I say all that to say I hear little tidbits and I get ideas. So I recently created a kind of guide for myself that I'm willing to share that is focused on the nomenclature aspect of the separate areas of vibe coding. And so I can make that available after this, and I'll also make my cybersecurity, which is a free tool agent, available after this. And it's getting in and using the tools to learn, right? So if you don't understand what are the top 20 design principles, or what are the design principles used by the biggest brands in the world, right? Or going to what are the largest consulting firms? How do they address these problems? So I use the tools to teach me all the time, every day, and I have created those guides. I'm happy to share them and use the tools to teach you what you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. And I even ask the tools, hey, what am I missing? What are the implications of this? When you're building, what are the implications of taking this action?
I think Heather hit on a very important part, which is leverage what's out there, right? We have, as individuals on the stage, but also just in this room, people have created ways to look at security, ways to look at design, ways to look at testing, and get that feedback more quickly than you can if you're doing it on your own. So leverage this community to help with that. But I think the one thing I will point out that really rings true for us as we work with clients or as we work on our own internal products, it's really important that you think about what is it that could happen, what is it that could go wrong, and then have AI actually help you vibe code your way to something that will address that. And one of the things that we're willing to do at APG is we have an entire ecosystem of different types of engineering agents, different types of QA agents, different ways of looking at security, architecture, that we've created and used in our projects that are not different than what probably Heather has created or Philip or Tim. That is available to you, and if you find the right folks who will share it, then it gives you a leg up, and you don't have to go learn. So what you would do is reverse engineering. So if we give you a markdown file, take it, throw it in GPT, and say, how did this person possibly come up with this? And I guarantee you it will have lots of opinions on what may have gone into it, but that's how you can learn what is this, what is it doing for me, and how does it protect my product, first of all, and then help me scale it.
I'm going to stick with the technical side of this question and go back to, because your software works, doesn't mean it works well. So even Luke mentioned QA agents. Do not underestimate testing. Test it yourself, but remember, if you built it, you're going to test what you already want it to do. Your users are not going to be as clever as you think they are. So you get other people to test it, get other people to use it, because they're not always going to do the expected, and you have to think like them, get other people to think like them, get people to test it, have your agents test it, think of the edge cases, try to break your own stuff after you built it.
And I'll take a personal liberty before Philip gives us the closing thoughts. Philip is building a tool with his wife called Bonsai 360. It's for caregivers of neurodivergent individuals and aging in place folks. It's an amazing tool called Bonsai. You should connect with Philip and check out. Go ahead, Philip, give us a closing thoughts.
Sure, I was going to say, apologize, but you've run out of tokens, so please retry your request again. No. As a, let's say, a technical vibe coder married to a non-technical vibe coder brings a lot of really interesting conversations around the table, because she can go and build something in a few minutes and come back and say, like, look, I built it, now just go make the app do that. And then that brings a lot of tension. But the good news is nowadays, more than ever, even rescue engineering is less expensive than it's ever been in the past. So don't stop what you're doing because you don't want to make a mistake and you don't want to have to get rescue engineered later on. Like, barge forward, build something. You can still rescue it later, easier and less expensively now than ever before. The most important thing to remember, though, the two things that have momentum that are the hardest to undo: data itself. So once you start getting real data in, now any changes you make require you to migrate the data or do that. And then people have momentum. So as people get in and they start using a feature, you can't just take that away from them without somebody getting some friction. So as long as you can keep those two things in mind, functionality can change very easily. You can even rewrite things in a different language almost overnight, use different tech, things like that. Those things are not so bad. Your back-end architecture, you can usually even change that pretty quickly. But getting the data to stay in a way that you can keep it and use it, and then getting your users that aren't going to feel like you just pulled the rug out from under them.
Everybody give the panelists a round of applause. And we're going to have Cannizz, who's going to tell us what is next.